Okay, so my name is Emily Trolia, and I'm a Practicum student with Academic Support Programs. As you can see here, today's workshop is going to be on test prep. It's hard to believe, but finals are in just 2 weeks, so it's time. If you haven't already, it's time to start thinking about how you're going to prepare for your finals. So basically, for any kind of test, so whether it's at the beginning of the semester or at finals time, um, it can be broken down into three different sections of pre-test, test day, and then post-test. Post-test is going to be a little more applicable to tests that are during the semester or to midterms than it is to finals time, but we will still go ahead and touch on that. Okay. Um, So the best thing you can do before a test is to just go to class. Get in the habit of attending every week, unless you get sick or there's just something you can't avoid that prevents you from going to class. But being in class and being present for the lectures and actively engaging and taking notes, it's really going to prepare you best for the exams. So this is not only because you'll be exposed to the information directly from the professor instead of trying to teach it to yourself after the fact, but also you'll be present for any important announcements or any important information about the exam that the professor gives you. You'll also be able to ask questions and see any examples that they may work in class. And while you're in class, part of being actively engaged and being an active listener is asking questions about any information that might confuse you or that is giving you difficulties on homework. Um, so the best place you can go for that is just to go to class. Like I said, the professor might be able to explain it to you better in class than they can over an email, or classmates might be able to help alleviate some of your confusion. So the next step in preparing for your exams is going to be identifying as much information about the exam as you possibly can. So you want to go into the exam knowing what the format is going to be like. And this is going to help shape how you study. So you study for multiple choice exams very differently than you study from exams that are all short answer or essay responses. So the professor will likely give you this information, but if they don't be afraid to ask. They're not going to tell you exactly what's going to be on it, but they can probably tell you what the format is. Some professors may go as far as saying, yeah, there's going to be 10 multiple choice, 25 true false, and then three short answer problems. So that'll really help you to determine where your priorities should be while you're studying and what kind of content you should be studying and any kind of examples that you might need to be working. And then next, try and figure out the number of questions that there are going to be. So, going into the final, usually that you have like 1 hour or 3 hours to take the exam. So, if you know how many questions are going to be on it, you can go into the exam with an idea of how much time you can spend on each question and kind of keep track and pace yourself while you're taking the exam. And then next, be sure you know what material is being covered. So during the semester, that means, what chapters are on this unit exam, or any kind of timelines, definitions, or examples the professor might want you to know. But at finals time, what you want to do to figure out the material covered is figure out whether or not the exam is going to be cumulative. So if it's cumulative, that means that you're going to have to know all of the content from, 13 weeks ago at the end of January to now. If the exam is not cumulative, then that means that the professor just wants you to know the information since your most recent exam or since the most recent chapter that they tell you. So again, all of these concepts will really help you to shape your studying and identify, what materials you need to study and be able to plan out those study sessions. Okay, so once you have an idea of what the exam is going to look like, start to organize your study materials. So if the professor doesn't tell you exactly, you can use information from the syllabus to figure out what's going to be on the exam because usually the syllabus will outline chapters, textbook numbers, any kind of information that you were supposed to have learned during that course. And while you're going over the syllabus, see if you can pinpoint any topics that you struggled with during the semester. And if there are any that stick out to you, go back and focus on these when you're studying for the final. And really kind of, put a little bit more time into the problem areas than you do the areas that you just understood really easily. Next, try and organize all of your notes, homework, and quizzes so that they're all in one place and that you can easily grab all of them when you go to study. So, reworking old problems and reworking examples that were given in the notes will really help you shape your studying to, the material that the professor deemed as important the first time. Because if they've already covered this information and they've already, separated it out from the rest of the information one time, they probably think that it's important enough to cover on the final. Next, you can also use your notes to create your own study guides. If you wanted to, pull out definitions or key dates, key terms, people, any kind of information that was highlighted as important in your notes, you could pull this out and turn it into study questions or turn it into information that you include on your study guide. You could also use your notes to create concept maps or any other kind of study tool that you like to use. And then finally, if it's a class like math or something where you work a lot of problems, go back and rework old homeworks or old quizzes, and especially make note of those that you missed the first time around. So if the professor opens up, if you have online assignments and the professor opens up old assignments or old quizzes, see if you can go back and rework those. Otherwise, take those hard copies back that they gave you and see if you can rework them. If you can't figure out the right answer, maybe check with a classmate or something to see if they got the right answer and they can point you in the right direction. So once you have all of your materials gathered, the next thing you should be doing is creating a study plan. So this video goes over the concept of a 5-day study plan. So we will watch it really quick and then kind of discuss it afterwards.
The 5-day study plan. In college, you're expected to learn vast amounts of material. The secret to success is organization. By planning and structuring your study sessions, you'll manage your time and tap into the most efficient ways to learn. One of the best study organizing tools is the 5-day study plan, which helps you use the 5 days before an exam to prepare. Even if you have 3 exams in the same week, the 5-day study plan is a great option. The key is to look ahead and make sure that you start early enough. One tip for multiple exams in the same week is to plot them on a calendar and plan which exam you'll study for on which day. Starting even 8 to 9 days before an exam will allow you to stagger your studying, instead of trying to cram for all 3 exams every day 5 days before exam day. The 5-day study plan has 4 steps. 1. Space out your learning over 5 days. Learning science tells us that the key to performing well on exams is starting early and using short, frequent study sessions. For example, you will perform better on an exam if you spend 1 hour studying each day for 20 days than if you spend 10 hours studying each day for 2 days. So pick your days and mark them on your calendar. 2. Divide material into manageable chunks. Divide the material you need to study into 4 equal parts. Label them A, B, C, and D. Part A should be the oldest and/or most difficult material, and Part D should be the most recently covered material. For example, if chapters 1 through 4 of your psychology textbook will be on your upcoming test, you could divide them like this. In Part A, study Chapter 4 because Chapter 4 is difficult. In Part B, study Chapter 1. Part C is Chapter 2, and Part D is Chapter 3. You can study lecture notes along with textbook chapters, or just study lecture notes divided up by the dates. 3. Each day, prepare a new chunk of information and review previous session material. That means you spend part of your time reviewing new information, but you also review the chapters you studied from the previous session. Reviewing the previous session's work is critical. Without reviewing, you're going to have difficulty remembering it come exam day. 4. Use active learning tools and self-testing techniques. Instead of simply reading through your notes and textbook, create a study tool that actively engages your learning process. Study tools can take many forms, for example, charts, a list of steps in a process, formula sheets, timelines, flashcards, or concept maps. As you review the study tools, avoid simply reading through them. Test yourself so that you have to recall information. You can recite facts out loud, take a self-test, have a friend quiz you, answer questions from a textbook, or review flashcards. Every study tool you create should have a corresponding testing strategy. For example, if you create a concept map or a timeline, work a bit each day on rewriting it from memory. If you use a formula sheet, practice writing formulas without looking at it. And if you list steps in a process, recite them out loud from memory. Commit yourself to about 2 hours of studying per day of very structured study time, and you, like many students, could see great results. For more help with academic success, visit the
Okay. So like she said at the beginning of the video, if you have multiple exams coming up, which is likely the case with finals right around the corner, it'll probably benefit you to start studying 8 to 9 days or even more in advance, which kind of puts us as right about now. Um, so, like she said in the video, the study plan might kind of differ based off of the content or the difficulty of the content. But basically, what you want to do is when you start it out, the material that you start studying the soonest should either be the oldest material or the material that you found the most difficult. So you start by preparing that material and you start by studying that first. And then the next day, you're going to add in a new chunk of material. So on the second day, you would review, the next oldest material or the next most difficult material. And then you add in a little bit of review time for the material that you started out with. So each day, um, the bulk of your studying should be on the new material that you've added in. And then you should incorporate time to review the material that you've been studying for the past couple of days. So that by the end, down here, the day before the exam or 2 days before the exam, however you have it structured, you should be reviewing all of the material that you've already studied. And then altogether, you can give yourself a self test on all the material. And if you set it up so that you have a day between that first day where you organize all the material together, and then you have kind of a break of 1 day before the exam, that would give you that extra day to go back and review any material that tripped you up on the self test or that you still feel like you just weren't quite 100% grasping. Okay. So once you've started studying and you've identified any areas of concern or any areas that are still tripping you up, the best thing you can do is find some resources. So classmates and tutors can be of great assistance, especially classmates because you likely didn't take identical notes. So if there's a concept that you're not quite grasping, maybe they took notes on it a little bit better than you did, or they took notes in a way that helps you understand the topic better. So find some friends or find some classmates and see if they can help you out. Otherwise, check out the SI sessions, TAs, and even a lot of times around finals time, professors might hold study sessions. So be sure you're attending these. Finally, ask somebody to quiz you or ask if you can recall the information to a friend or family member. So speaking the information out loud rather than just reading it in your head will really help you retain it and really help to see if you can recall the information. Um, so that would kind of, having a friend quiz you would kind of simulate the exam, trying to recall the information off the top of your head rather than being able to flip back to your notes if you really just can't quite think of it just yet. And the best thing you can do, like I've been saying this whole time, is just practice. So a great way to practice is to make flashcards, but rather than just doing, term on one side and definition on the other, see if you can take it a step further and do fact, application, and concept. So just the whole point of that is to just take it beyond the definition because odds are on the exam, the professor is going to want you to know more than just what the definition of the term is. So, see if you can use it in a sentence, see if you can apply it to a different concept within that unit, or see just what kind of connections you can make with that term. So, that's really going to help you get a deeper understanding of the importance of the concept, how it works with other concepts. And that's just going to take you one step beyond being able to recite the definition of the word. Next, just try and verbalize any information that you're doing. So, if there's steps in a process, talk about them out loud. If you need to know anything beyond just the order of the steps or something, name them, detail what happens in those steps. Just try and provide as much information as you possibly can. Because, like we've continually said throughout the semester, verbalizing this information really helps with retention. And it's going to kind of simulate trying to draw on that information during the exam. And then finally, you should rework all your quizzes, homeworks, and practice exams and bring it all together in one study session. Working all this information together rather than, in the separate chunks that it was taught in will really help simulate that final exam when all the information is, out of ordered and all compiled in one place. And then finally, before you take the exam, just remember to stick to your routine. Um, don't do anything crazy out of the ordinary on exam day, and try and get a good night's rest and eat a healthy meal before the exam. And when you're studying, don't forget to take breaks so that you don't get all burnt out. Okay. So here's some tips to keep in mind for test day. So arrive early, make sure you're seated with a few minutes to spare so that you're not frantically running into class trying to get your Scantron out and get your Scantron all filled out, with 30 seconds before the professor hands out the exam. And don't forget any materials that you might be able to use on the exam. If there's a cheat sheet or if it's open book, make sure that you bring these because the professor probably won't have extras. And if it's, if you use a Scantron where you have to have a certain type of pencil, make sure that you have that. This will help alleviate a lot of unnecessary stress on you and help you be able to focus on the exam rather than all of these other factors that are swimming around in the back of your mind. And then here are some important things to keep in mind while you're taking the test. So, first things first, just take a minute and read the directions. I know this sounds silly, but a lot of times you can miss just silly little points just because you didn't read one thing that the professor wanted you to do. So, make sure that for each section, you know what you're supposed to be doing. If it's all multiple choice, just make sure you're reading the answer choices carefully. But if it's like short response or any kind of essays, make sure that you read the instructions thoroughly and that you really answer what is being asked of you. The next tip that I have is to just do a memory dump when you get the exam. So if there's any kind of definitions or formulas or any key dates that you know that you're going to have to know on the exam, just write that out on a scratch piece of paper or write it out on a blank part of the exam, just so that you can go back and reference it at any point and, just kind of get it out of your brain right at the beginning. And then next, start with what you know. So if you go through the exam and you see that there are questions that you feel super confident about, go back and answer or go through and answer all those first. Because, the quicker that you can answer the questions that you know, that'll leave you more time to think about and really try and come up with the best answers for the questions that are tripping you up. Or if there are certain problems that are going to take you a long time to work, that'll leave you with more time to complete those problems. And the next one tip that I like to give people is to use the test to take the test. So if there's a problem that's tripping you up, maybe go through and see if there's a question that gives context clues, or if there's a similar question that you knew the answer to, see if that could help you out. It may not give you the exact answer, but it might help you eliminate some answer choices so that you only have to decide between, two options instead of all four options. And then finally, before you turn it in, double check your work. Um, Make sure that you've answered everything. If there are multiple parts to a question, make sure you've addressed all parts of the question. And just make sure that everything is filled in to the best of your ability so that you're not leaving any free points out there. Just try and gather up all the points that you possibly can. If there's any kind of partial credit, make sure you give as much information as you possibly can. And then finally, post-test is going to be a little bit more applicable to tests during the middle of the semester or at the beginning than finals time, but it's still an important concept to keep in mind. So once you get the exam back, just try and analyze what types of questions you missed. So this will help guide your studying as you move along throughout the semester. So if there's a concept on the midterm that you missed a lot, this will help you to know that you need to focus on that area for the final a little bit more. Um, so that is just a way to identify any weaknesses that you might have and help you structure your studying for the rest of the semester. And then here's a little bit of a short video that just kind of recaps everything that we talked about.
Be prepared. Ensure you have taken the time to go over lecture materials and have made sense of it. Take some practice questions prior to the exam throughout the study period to find any holes in knowledge and build that bridge of retrieval that is needed for the exam. Arrive early. You'll increase your confidence if you are relaxed and are not rushing to get to the exam on time. Thus, your anxiety will be lower as well, and you'll be able to focus more on the test and not the stress of being late. Plan wisely. You will need to pace yourself so you can complete the test in the allotted time frame. Complete the questions that you know first to save time. Be positive. There are multiple scientific studies that show optimists do better on tests. In one study by the University of Toronto, scientists proved that when in a positive mood, your visual cortex absorbs more information. In contrast, negative moods literally result in tunnel vision. Here are some tips for taking the exam. Read the question. Formulate an answer without looking at the answer choices or foils, and scan the answer choices. Then mark your answer. When you run across overly challenging questions, here's a method that just might help. Try the STEM Doctor Funnel method. First, identify what is being asked of you, looking at the STEM first. Distinguish the doctor words, those words in the paragraph or question that you need to know to be able to answer the question. Then simplify the question. Choosing between two answer choices can be very difficult and challenging. But if you compare two foils at a time, your brain isn't as overwhelmed. However, sometimes choosing between two choices is the problem. So rely on your first impressions. The first answer that pops in your mind is probably correct. It can be counterproductive to review answers and make changes. Only change your first answer if you have a very specific reason, not just a feeling. Always take the time to review the test. Go over the answers you missed and determine if it was a silly mistake, if you misread the question, or if it's a knowledge issue. Follow up with your professor to determine why you'd missed a question or to discuss any areas of confusion. If you need any other assistance or help with test taking, please come see us in the Center for Teaching and Learning.
Okay, so that is the end of the content for today. Um, we are going to be doing the same workshop on test prep again next week, and then that'll be our last one for the semester, as finals week is the following week. Um, so just, remember all of our past workshops are on our website, and they're on our YouTube channel, and we even have some more study help type of material on our website. And then if there's any kind of, academic coaching or consultation session that you want to squeeze in before the end of the semester, check out that information on our website, shoot us an email, or drop by anytime during normal business hours. We're in Johnson Commons East, which is between Weir Hall and the Rebel Market. We're on the lower level. So I will stop the recording here. And then if anybody has any questions that they wanted to ask,